Well, I would start, Christy, on the other side of the question. If you don't have a will, then any wishes that you may have made are in the discretion of your family, because your family are going to inherit. So the problem you've got is you may have said, oh, I want something to go to hospice. You may have even been more precise. But if you don't have a will, that intention doesn't necessarily get carried out. And so hospice or any other charity loses out. And I think we know during this time that we've been through that these charities are very dependent on gifts. And if they don't get the gifts that you want to give them, then there's a problem. So I think the second thing is, oh, well, I'm going to scribble it down. I'll just write it down on a bit of a paper. I think someone said earlier, after my Saturday afternoon tea, that can work if you hit the mark and you really know what you're doing. So you write out your will and scribble away, and you may even go and find a book or something online to do it. And I don't know, your daughter and son come in, or your husband's there. You say, oh, well, come on, I've done my will. I'm going to sign. I understand we all have to be together in the same place and do it all together, so we're going to sign the will. And come the time after the sad day arrives, you're not there, and now you discover that the will is invalid in this respect, that the people who you wanted to leave money to have witnessed the will, and therefore they're not entitled to benefit. So I think the second point to make is to make sure that everyone gets exactly what is intended, that you seek professional help. And it's not necessarily that expensive, and it's quite a painless experience. I think someone else today described it as actually quite cathartic. You start off with an initial consultation, certainly in my office, where we'll sit and we'll discuss your requirements very carefully and make notes. And actually, we do that on a no-commitments basis, and off you go. And we then send out a letter of engagement. We already know exactly what you want in your will from that consultation. And then we get a letter of engagement back, and we'll draft the will, and then we will go through the process either by exchange of email or by post, depending how techy you are, and eventually we will land up with a document which reflects your intentions. And then you will come in, and it will be formally signed by independent witnesses, and that's the important thing if you're going to do it on your Saturday afternoon after your tea, that you have independent witnesses. So rather get the neighbours in than to. But I really don't recommend that you do that. I have seen so many situations where that has actually gone wrong. I think we started talking a bit about it earlier. What do you leave if you want to make a charitable donation? And it may be that you want to leave a fixed amount, and you've got to think about that carefully, but it can work as long as you know what your finances are and how exactly that's all going to work out. That's fine. The other way, which actually, funny enough, I prefer, but I would need to speak to the person, the testator, the person writing the will, is to actually leave a percentage, an appropriate percentage of your estate, because that means that the people that are going to benefit from your estate, including in this example hospice, are going to get a percentage, rather than finding that either you're getting too much or too little. So I think that's the important thing. You're either going to leave what's called a residuary benefit, or you're going to leave a specific legacy. One of the other options, which is interesting, this booklet is actually very good, Leaving a Legacy, and I do recommend it. I hadn't seen it till now, but I've had a quick look at it, and it really is very good. So if you can pick one up, I think it's well worth having a look through. One of the things that they suggest, and this is possibly for the larger, the wealthier of us here on the island, if there are any of us, and that is to create a trust and to create some sort of discretion. And if you're in that situation, it can actually be quite interesting, because You may have, for example, have been interested in hospice during your life, contributed, been involved even in a management or caring capacity, and now you want members of your family or trustees to actually make sure that the, so to speak, the legacy is ongoing. And so you have a trust, and as Anne was saying, because I know I've been involved in charities before, you have to pitch, and you're always fighting with the other charities, we won't mention them, to try and get the best benefit. But, the concept of a trust is interesting. I think, just to summarize the points, the first thing is, I think you're better off having a proper will. I think the second thing is to have it professionally done. And I'm really not selling my services for that. I think the point is that doing it at home runs a lot of risks and a lot of unexpected things. And I think the third thing is to decide how you're going to give it and make sure. We try to make our wills today as in such a way that you don't have to keep on changing them. One of the things people talk about codicils, and I will just mention them. I haven't done a codicil for probably 20 years.
I've got no idea what that is. Sorry.
Very, very useful. A codicil is a way you amend the wills. And in the old days, in fact, I saw some wills done in the early 1900s, and the advocate would sit there and write out the whole will, and in wonderful long hand.
Oh, I bet they're
and
wonderful.
If you go up to the registry, you can actually see some of them, and then so the testator comes and says, "Well, I've changed my mind. I'm cutting this one out, and I'm doing this." And in the old days, you can't just write lines through the will. You can, but it's much better that you do a codicil, which is an attachment to the will, changing it.
I see, yeah.
I always say to people, 2 sets of papers is more dangerous than one. And so with modern word processing methods, you don't have some old boy writing it out like me, or, what you have is you've got a word processor, and so every time someone comes in, it's actually easier to change the will. So if you want to cut someone out of the will, or you want to add hospice or any other charity, you just do a new will. And we do them quite often.
And just on the note of you're talking about people with trusts and things, and the wealthier and the less wealthy of us. I mean, Mel, from the point of view of charities over here, you don't have to be worth a lot of money to be able to leave something, do you?
No, we all really should have wills, shouldn't we, once we're adults? And the point is that every pound raised on the island stays on the island. So anything that's gifted to hospice comes to Hospice Isle of Man. It's a very Manx charity, Manx registered charity, and every pound counts. So no donation is too small. From £200 to £200,000, they'll all be very gratefully received and make a huge difference to the ongoing care that we can provide to our community.
Absolutely. And again, as you mentioned earlier on, if people wanted to come up and have a chat, they wanted to see the work that hospice is doing, perhaps if they were thinking about it and thought, well, could I see what was actually going on, they're more than welcome. Absolutely.
It'd be lovely to have people up. We've had a fabulous donation from Tavia. And we've got a refurbishment now of Rebecca House, which is looking really wonderful. We'll be very proud to open the doors shortly in November, when we are going to invite the public up for 3 days, mid-November, hopefully. And before that, whilst we're just finishing up, we would love to have people up to see the facilities. It's very interesting to see. Hospice isn't just about the building up there. It's much more than that. We have the hospice at home service now, where nurses go out all over the island. So patients have the choice now of where to spend their days, which is a wonderful choice.
I think you saying that, Mel, is that because of the trust that I pitched for in 2018, we actually delivered over 3,000 hours of care to people in their own homes, which was a 62% increase on the previous year. Absolutely phenomenal to be able to do that, because people are telling us that they would like to stay at home and have their care if they can and it's appropriate. And so we were able to actually do that because of a legacy and a trust fund. So it's really important that we have funds in to support us to deliver our care.
Well, speaking of that, just remind us, where can we get hold of these fabulous booklets that Tim was saying are well worth a good look
Leaving
at?
a legacy. Very well done. Yeah.
So you can download them from the website, the hospice website, or give us a call on 647 400. We're happy to pop them in the post or pop up and see us at hospice.